What on earth is going on at Newcastle United? I think this is a question a lot of people are asking right now. They seem to be in freefall right now. We knew that this could be a bit a summer where they lose some top players on the pitch, but the team off the pitch, it would have, they're losing people off the pitch as well. The whole team just seems like the whole club seems like it's falling apart to a point. To be honest, latest news, and this does feel like this could have happened. It did feel like that this could be something that was coming. And I did wonder if I was just thinking he would last this season, that he would remain for this season. But Eddie Howe now leaving the club feels like it's gone from one level to another. It's one thing selling the best players, but to now lose the manager as well, seemingly as a kind of the direct result to that as well, or as a maybe mainly under his frustrations about the amount of players that were leaving. Feels like he's gone from bad to worse, really, from one level to another. The new manager they're bringing into the club, Matthias Jansen, I believe that's how you say that. Who's from Germany. He's a 38-year-old, so still a very young manager. And he's managed Al Ahly, who are in the Saudi Pro League. And I believe Newcastle's owners they do have some ownership over them as well. It's like a club partnership between them and Newcastle, and we've seen players a couple of times have gone from one to the other. But it's not dissimilar actually to what Chelsea did, or tried to do with Rosigne from Strasbourg, another multi-club set up, bringing the manager from the kind of from the maybe I don't know the team that's in the lesser kind of league, if that's the fair way to say it. I'm not really sure how to word it. To the Premier, taking the manager from that team to the Premier League club. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it backfire massively. Chelsea, of course, but I don't know. I'll be honest. I do not know much about this manager at all. Like, if anything, I think a lot of people are the same. That doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't going to work out for Newcastle, and of course, it doesn't necessarily. It's not necessarily fair to make the direct comparison with when we've seen this done before. It might not work out like that, but I do think the reason why this is a real risk for Newcastle, and the reason why a lot of people will be asking questions already, is because with Newcastle, because of the owners, because of how much money is at the club, an expectation has been set now to perform to a certain level, and it might not be the pressure and expectation that comes with the Liverpool Man United job, but there is an expectation and a pressure there that wasn't there before, that is going to, make it harder for a manager to be given the time to develop and grow themselves. It very much is, they will be judged largely on the results, and if it doesn't work out, you do feel that the pressure could mount on this manager really, really quickly. Know very little about him. I do know that he's won back-to-back Asian Champions Leagues in that league, and Al Ahly have always been, he's been there since I think it was 2023. They've been at the top end of the Saudi Pro League, and of course there's pressure, expectation out there. They had to do quite well out there, and it's seen that he's obviously done a decent job, but it's a whole different level of pressure in the Premier League, and it's a whole different game. It's a whole different playing field. It just feels like a massive, like, although they're trying to make that a top league out there. It's a league the top players play in, and it's a league that is a top division, of course, and a league that's got a lot of money, so there is an expectation to win. The Premier League is just a different level of football, and it's a completely different thing for him, and it does feel like a really, really big responsibility early on to take this Newcastle job, particularly at such a difficult time as well. So this is under better circumstances, and it can maybe be a more smooth transition for this manager. But no, it's very much does feel in at the deep end, because he's going to be brought into a job that's already a lot of pressure, already really difficult, but with what's certainly looking at the moment like it's going to be a much weaker team to last season as well, and a team that struggled for large parts of last season as well, with Eddie Howe in charge, with quite a lot of top players that aren't there anymore, and they're expected to lose quite a few more throughout the remainder of the window. It does feel like something's going on behind the scenes in Newcastle, and it's a worrying time for the club. I mean, to recap a bit on this takeover, it was something that was rumoured for a while. Obviously, the club was for years Newcastle really have been sort of the fan base have really suffered without any form of success at all. You know, they were on the brink of success in the early Premier League days, never won silverware though, despite having players like Alan Shearer, despite having really, really good seasons, they've been involved in title races. Never was able to lift a major honour in that time, and obviously since then they had relegations a couple of times to the Championship, usually come straight back up. But the best they were doing for well over a decade really was just surviving in the Premier League. And there was a lot of fans that were really fed up with Mike Ashley. There was a lot of it wasn't. They was very much not. They wasn't doing particularly great as a club, and this takeover was supposed to happen in 2020, but then fallen through. And in the following year, after the season had already begun, 2021, when the club at that point were fighting relegation, the takeover went through. And this it's like a Saudi Arabian sports media kind of thing that just paid a ridiculous amount of money for the club. So of course, a massive takeover like this, as soon as they taken them over, there was a lot of excitement about what this could mean for the future of Newcastle. Straight away, Steve Bruce was out the door, Eddie Howe come in, and it was obvious that Eddie Howe was the manager they wanted right from the start, because Eddie Howe that summer turned down the Celtic job in what I think it was clear was in preparation for this Newcastle role. And that's first season Eddie Howe with this new ownership as well, they was able to avoid relegation. In the second season their rise was rapid without even having to invest that much. They was able to finish inside the top four in that first full season under this new ownership, the first full season under Eddie Howe, and they were brilliant in that season, the 22-23. The next season, okay, they fall off a little bit, but still very much feels like they're in the right place. They, of course, lost the cup final the previous year as well. By this point, players like Anthony Gordon are coming, players like Sandro Tonali as well, club record signing, who then ended up having that massive suspension in his first season as well. But the second season, of course, they ended up missing out on Europe, and the Champions League exited early as well. But not being in Europe the following season, they finished again similar to it's kind of like they had a good season and a bad season. That's the pattern they kind of follow for a while. They finished top four or top five or whatever it was again, and qualified for the Champions League. And last season had a fairly good run in the Champions League, actually, despite the shocking league form last season, the worst we've seen by far under this new ownership under Eddie Howe. I say new ownership, it's they've been there 5 years now, but you know what I mean. And they, dreadful league form, but reached Champions League round of 16 after an impressive run, finishing the top 8 of the league phase as well in the new format. But when their Champions League run did come to an end, it comes to an end really badly. They were absolutely hammered by Barcelona in the second leg of the Camp Nou. And the league form after that did not improve either. There were some really low moments for Newcastle last season in the league as well. Sunderland doing the double over them, dreadful runs of form. And St James's Park, one of the biggest strengths under Eddie Howe, they're so difficult to play against at home. Like St James's Park, they just turned it into an absolute fortress. I think there was a season a little while ago in Eddie Howe, I think they only lost 2 or 3 games at home or something all season. Their home form was brilliant, and last season even though their away form in previous seasons had really let them down, their home form had been really held them back a bit because their home form was so strong. They were getting by, and this season, the season's just gone. That sort of the home form felt like it really sort of collapsed as well. And then, of course, one thing that was significant that this new ownership brought to the club, one thing that was significant that Eddie Howe has also brought to the club, was their first major honour in 60 odd years. They won the League Cup, beating Liverpool in the final the season before last. In the season, they also finished top Champions League place as well, which that felt like a massive, that was the moment the club's going to grow and going to really kick on. But the sort of last season they didn't build on that, and they took a massive step backwards. And I think this is where a lot of the pressure started to mount on Eddie Howe. And it really felt like coming to this season, could he be on his last chance? Could he have taken the club as far as he could take them? But I don't actually think he was the problem at all. I thought Eddie Howe, if you look at the job he'd done at Newcastle, I think he'd done very, very well. When you think that the sort of ambition that these owners have and come in, the sort of investment that people expected didn't really materialise. And I think Newcastle are maybe at a bit of a disadvantage. It's not maybe the destination that a lot of top clubs will want. Sorry, a lot of top players will want to go to. I mean, the location maybe doesn't help them. Maybe I've heard people sort of suggest before, and what I think they won't like is 5 years into this ownership, they've had the one major honour and they've had a couple of Champions League finishes, couple of Champions League runs. What they haven't had is a sustained title race. What they haven't like any real title race at all. They haven't had a particularly good FA Cup run, or they haven't got to. They haven't really had any kind of real statement run in Europe. I know last season, to be fair, they did actually have a good run in the Champions League, but they've not. They've had 2 seasons where they've also not qualified for Europe as well, is what I'm trying to say. And if they could have maybe got a Europa League finish in one of those seasons, then that feels like a competition that's more winnable. But they haven't they've had seasons they've not qualified for Europe, and I think they'll look at this and you would think when these owners taken over 5 years on, would they have been happy with this? I think what you can't forget is Newcastle haven't won a major trophy in so long, and that's something that meant so much to the fans, to the club winning that League Cup. But the fact is they've not built on it. They've in fact taken a step backwards in the following year. And last season their form was terrible. They finished in the bottom half, and it looks like things are getting worse. They're going to be in a worse position coming into the next season by the looks of things, which I think is a real worry. And I do wonder what's going on behind the scenes at this club at the moment. Now, because a lot of the signings that these new owners have brought in look like they're going to be leaving now. Some of them have already left. Anthony Gordon and Guimarães were linked with a move away for a while. They kind of knew that they would be players they might lose this window, but the money don't seem to be spending the money that they've received for those for losing these players. I mean, you look at every player they've lost. Their players that have brought in have been for smaller fees than what they sold players for, and it very much feels like they're having to work within really strict FFP restrictions, and it always feels like it's been like that to a certain point, but it just seems like they are really, really restricted. Not being in Europe as well, and the fact that they are losing a lot of top players, they're in a position where it's really hard, it seems, to attract top players. And when they was in the Champions League, that was maybe a bit easier. But they do still feel limited on the types of signings they can get. They've missed out to Liverpool multiple signings. Most recently, Munoz, who Liverpool ended up signing from Osasuna earlier this window, they missed out on. He looked set to go to Newcastle, and they ended up missing out on him. And it does seem like that they can get a certain level of signing. They can certainly make big additions, but there's been big players they've been linked with that ended up going elsewhere because so it looks like if they're going for a player, someone like Man United goes in for them as well. It feels like they're likely to miss out. Even when they seem to have a bit more freedom in the transfer market and what they could spend. And they've already lost Ashley Gordon, of course. They've already lost Sandro Tonali. But it looks like pretty certain Bruno Guimarães wants out, and it looks certain they're going to lose him in some way or another in this window. It looks like they're going to lose him. Joe Willock looks like he could be leaving as well. You've got Lewis Hall, who Man United here look like they're going to take full advantage of the situation and come in for him. He's also linked with a return to Chelsea as well. And more as well. They're some of the ones there, and they're some of the top players. And Eddie Howe spoke in an interview the other day saying, we don't want to lose the top players. We're losing them. We don't have many of them left pretty much. He was quite open and honest about that, and he was maybe too honest in his interview after their pre-season game. I think it was 1-1 draw they had with Gateshead, a local friendly last weekend. After the game, when he was asked about the Bruno Guimarães situation, he outright said, and maybe he talked himself into an exit here, saying, that's not my decision. I don't know he pretty much said, I don't know what's going on, but people above me are going to be making these decisions. That's not my decision to make, pretty much. At first, when this was first announced, I was wondering, was he sacked? Did his comments get him the sack there? But no, it does seem like he's walked, and you can hardly blame him. Something's really wrong at the club. They're losing so many players. All the top players are being sold, and they're not replacing them. They've not replaced Isak, not properly, a year on from losing him. The money that they've received for players like Gordon and Tonali, they're not investing back in on the same level. They've made three additions this window. I mean, they have made signings, of course, but they've been for significantly smaller fees, and they're not replacing the top players with players that are on anywhere near the same kind of calibre. The signings they have made, they bought a new goalkeeper, but they've also made Traore from Hoffenheim is a good signing, promising young winger. Only 20 years of age though, and the 42 million signing. And also Bamba from Monaco, which was I think was around 30 million. Again, another young player, very young player. I think only about 20 years old himself as well. So yeah, you can see there that these are probably. I'm not. These are good. Could be good additions for Newcastle. These are promising players. These could prove to be good signings. These are players that I think have got potential. But what? So I'm definitely not disregarding that. But what I do think is these are signings. These are players that they signed that are very much players that have still got to develop. They're not making big additions, and it does seem like players like Gordon, players like Tonali have used the club almost. It's been used. The club's now like a stepping stone club rather than a destination club, and I think that's what the fans and these owners will be most frustrated about. Is that's not what they were trying to build when they come in 5 years ago. They were trying to put the club really on the biggest stage, and I think they've definitely leveled the club up from where they was, but it very much feels like it's on the brink of falling apart, and they've taken such a big step backwards, and it could get very bad next season. It feels like so many players are leaving and very few replacements are coming in. And you look at the players they're linked with at the moment. Again, players like Badiashile from Chelsea, players that like and like the signings they have made are very very unproven. It does feel like there's no proven quality coming into the club, and all the top players, all their best players, are leaving pretty much. So very worrying times, and I do wonder what's going on with this ownership. It does feel like they're really having to balance the books. Well, not even just balance the books. It seems like they're literally having to sell the entire team to not get pulled up for financial fair play. Could they be at risk of some sort of sanctions or something? Is there something that's not been right with this ownership right from the start? Because it does feel like they've been working within certain restrictions right from the start. People said it early on. And 2 years ago, 2024, Amanda Stadley, who led the consortium to take the club over, left her role at the club, and since then things have seemed a bit not right off behind the scenes at all. No real significant money's been invested in signings, and they've become a selling club, a club that develops players and sells them on, and in a way they're not even been able to reinvest the money particularly well. The only way you can hope this sorts itself out for Newcastle is the new manager really performs well and really sort of puts aside any of the questions and like eases the pressure instantly. But the only way he's got a chance of doing that, I feel, is the only hope I think they've got is if they do get the funds they need, they do get get the money into the club that they need to balance the books in selling what will be pretty much the core of the team, pretty much all the top players, and they are able to still attract a couple of top players into the club and just reinvest the money enough to have a team that's capable of still competing next season. At the moment, how bad could it get? I mean, bottom half last season, and the team losing some of its main assets, will pretty much most of its main assets, the manager leaving as well, and also a lot of the backroom staff leaving as well, are really highly thought of at the club as well. People like Jason Tyndall and people that worked alongside Eddie Howe for the entire 5 years he's been there. Really, really worrying time. So, yeah, Newcastle certainly, at the moment, does feel like it's been described as they're in free fall, and that very much does feel accurate. It feels like they're falling apart to a point. Can they sort this out? Is it even like financially possible that they could sort this out before the end of the window? Because at the moment, I think it is worrying times for the club.